Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick.
And I'm your co-host, not Dr. Kirby Brunswick.
This
not
is
a doctor.
Very weird looking at you this way. We've never recorded this way.
Well, yeah, especially because I can subtly hear you through the floorboards.
I'm always around you. For those not watching on YouTube, Kirby and I are recording together, but separate. Don't say it. In the same house, but different rooms. So our audio, well, it's not just about the audio. It's actually more about the visual for cuts and stuff. We did this for our editor.
You're welcome, Jacob. You're doing a great job.
So we're in the same house, but in completely different rooms with setups. And it's just very weird.
It was just too echoey to both be on. We have two computers in the office, but if we're recording on separate video feeds and I didn't have a long enough mic to have the just one audio, it was a whole thing. Well, I'll get longer mic cords.
I should have done? I should have lied and been like, well, we're recording in separate rooms because we have separate offices. Our house is so elaborate because I'm such a successful chiropractor that we have multiple offices.
I mean, if you could give up your walk-in closet, you could have.
That is where I actually do my best meetings. My brand meetings tend to be down there, but
there's a desk in your closet, but I wouldn't call it an office.
No, it's a multifunctional room. So anyways, our poor children have to share a room, but I've turned one bedroom into a gym, one bedroom into a home office, and one bedroom into a closet. Sorry, kids.
Got our priorities straight.
Your mom's got her priorities.
About making money, looking good, wearing fancy clothes.
Fit. Okay. All right. So today we are talking about candor, which I think is
Candor specifically.
It's a really funny. So I'm curious to see if this will turn into kind of a series. Like this could be like our series for 2024 if people like it, where we talk about different leadership traits and
I like that idea.
Yeah. But I think it's funny that we start with candor and not something like drive or ambition, something that I'm really good at. We start with the one where it's like, oh yeah, But I feel like I've always been super vulnerable about my flaws, probably even more so than my strengths. And so it's not actually that surprising that we would start with something that I suck at.
Well, I think it's more interesting conversations come around the things that you struggle with because there are not only the successes, but the failures there. Mm-hmm. Whereas sometimes when people are speaking from the stage, they talk about a certain trait, like it's easy because for them it might be. So it's, they show you they give you the example of and here's how I used confidence to get through this thing or whatever. And it's
oh, is that hard for you? Oh, you seem really not confident.
Yeah. It's like watching a Major League Baseball player talking about how he hit a fastball. And it's you trained your whole life to hit fastballs and you started good at it. That's not an interesting story. It's not a struggle.
So I have another interview later today and I wasn't really sure. I'm not 100%. I'm never really sure where the conversation, we'll get to candor at some point in this, I'm sure. But
this is just the intro anyway.
People are used to fast forward. But I was going to ask, what do you think your superpower is in practice? But should I just fuck with my guest and be what's your biggest flaw? Just right out of the gates, first question. Hi, nice to meet you. What's your biggest flaw as a chiropractic leader?
Be interesting.
I would love that question.
What would you say?
Candor? No. Oh God. I mean, there's so many. I would say vanity. 100% vanity. Yeah. It's, and it's tethered to that really just wanting to be significant. And that's also one of my biggest strengths. But then how do you measure how you're being significant? That tends to be in metrics, so it's just this, it's the snake. It's Scully, my snake. So what's yours?
As a chiropractic leader, probably that I'm not a chiropractor. That's really held me back.
Number one flaw.
I'm just a guy with a finance and marketing degree, and no one wants to listen to my opinions on chiropractic because I'm not one. So,
Way to skirt the issue. What is it? You don't have enough
um,
tattoos.
you know, I think biggest personal flaw is probably might be like lack of starting. Like I'm good at
Initiative.
yeah, it might be initiative of things that I, feel are important. Like we've had projects at the clinic and stuff that I knew should be done for a long time, but like I keep myself busy enough with tasks other people have asked me to do
Mhm.
that I might have a strategic vision or things I think are important in my own mind. I don't put enough value on those and get them going.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I mean, could we be more classic Enneagram 3 and 9? Like, you don't need to know us at all to be like, let me guess, so you're a 3, let me tell you what your biggest flaw is, and you're a 9. So, um, other warm-up question. What books you been reading lately? Tell me the last 3 books you've
Um,
read.
a weird, very weird mix.
Okay.
Um, so right now I am reading Keepers of the Lost Cities second book. It's a young adult novel about
Different than my young adult
a
novels. I'll
girl who
just
yours
mention
is
that.
not young adult. I
It
hate
is
when people
classified as young adult. It is literally classified as young adult. Just because there's sex in it does not mean
when I
I
think
agree, it
YA,
shouldn't
I
be.
think like 13-year-olds are reading it and 13-year-olds should not be reading the book you're reading.
Yes, anyways, keep going. You
Okay.
can call it a young adult, but
So I'm reading a
different.
book for Charlie because we need to record another Charlie's Book Club podcast. So Charlie and I read Charlie's books and then we talk about them. So that's the one that I am currently reading. The last book I read before that was The Brave by his last name is McDonald, I think. He's the guy who wrote Fletch. But this book was about a poor alcoholic man who agreed to be murdered on film for $30,000, but he's probably going to get scammed out of it. And the last days he's spending with his family while keeping that secret. Um, and then before that, I read a super disturbing book by Chuck Palahniuk about incestual gay brothers who murder people.
God, you got to put like a R rating on so people listen to this in the car with their children. Jesus, Kirby.
You asked what I was reading. I was
Well,
I was in a spooky season. Now
spooky.
now like the next book I want to well, the next book I'm going to read is Alex Hormozy. And then
Oh
I'm going to get
yeah,
into my Christmas mode. I have like a few Christmas books and collections of Audible things that I listen to usually. How
yeah.
about
Uh,
you?
so
Akatar, Akatar, Akatar.
hello, I read that
Oh,
like 2
sorry.
years ago. Jeez. No, but so reading kind of simultaneously reading the Alex Hormozy, starting with the offers, which it's so hard to get through because my ADHD, like it's so good. I'm like 90 pages into it, but I'll get like a page and a half and that will prompt me thinking about like a Facebook ad for the clinic. And so then I'll
Mm,
like kind of, or like, oh, I should send that email to that person about that thing. So it's hard for me to get through because it prompts so much initiative and action out of me that like it's a slog. So that's happening. Very good book. Then I've pretty much been head down in Iron Flame since it was released Tuesday, and that I'm almost done with. And then prior to that was, oh gosh, what is it? A Light in the Ember, which is like a prequel to a different from Blood and Ash. Like, yeah, I'm still in that like romance fantasy world. I mean,
but
I
we
am,
do we
I
do
am,
have to, as a family, read the prequel to the Hunger Games because
yeah,
that
I'm
movie
excited
is
about
coming
that.
out in a couple weeks. So I think
Yes.
you, me, and Charlie will all probably be reading that this week so
Yeah.
that we can all go to the movie together. Ty
And I'm
probably
excited about
won't
that.
participate.
How do we find out if there's sex in the book though?
Oh, I'm
Because
sure there's book reviews. I mean, Charlie's read the entire Hunger Games series, so
okay, I just gotta like because you can't trust this young adult stuff, I tell you. So, all right, are you ready? Should we like actually get
do an
into?
episode.
Yeah, let's do this. We don't have a bio.
I mean, you could
Yeah.
do a bio for me. I could do a bio for you.
Okay, that sounds fun. We're never gonna get to recording a damn episode. Oh, I'm really curious. So, okay, by the time this comes out, my 35-minute episode will have come out. And I'm very
Mm,
interested to see what people. So, I did a poll on Instagram and asked, like, hey, or I said, like, hey, I just did this 35-minute episode, beginning to end. Are you excited? Or, are you like, do you like when I do a deep dive into
boo.
everything? It was 50-50. I actually expected it to be a landslide of people being like, no, I want some of the short ones.
I guess maybe for a solo because you
Yeah.
can
No, I
organize
would
your
never do
thoughts.
a short one for a guest.
Okay, good. I was going to say I
No,
don't like this trend. As your producer,
no, 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 no.
I want you to have long-ranging weird conversations with people.
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, it would just be for some solos where it's just like, can I save my story about Target and tattoos and books for
Put it in the
an
weekly
intro?
sleigh. Don't
Yeah.
bore the audience.
Yeah. All right. Anyways, oh my God, did I tell you what Ty did the other day? I don't think I did. This is a really funny story. I was going to save it for an intro, but all
There's
right.
teaser. Save it.
Yeah.
Save it. We've already got an
Okay.
intro here.
Okay. All right. All right. It'll be in next week's intro then. Okay. So, you want to pray?
Sounds good. All right. Dear God, thank you again for allowing us this platform where we get to impact the lives of people and have interesting conversations that hopefully bring light, healing, growth. Um, as we talk about a subject like candor today, help us to make sure the truth we're speaking to others is your truth and not coming from us. Help us to still ourselves and find that deep central truth that we know comes from you and share that in the kindest way possible. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okie dokie artichoke. So canter. I think that there is some people who've probably heard it, but really don't know what it is. And then a whole host of people who think they know what it is. Maybe they don't. Like, I have a feeling it's a word that gets used uh, poorly. So,
Yeah. So the way that we kind of came about this and the way that influence is going to influence kind of this conversation is I was introduced to it. I knew what the word candor was of just kind of being straightforward and honest. But in Gary Vaynerchuk's book, 12 and a half, which I don't know if my camera will allow
there you
it.
go.
There we go. I'll have a link in the show notes if people want to read it. Um, he talks about specifically kind candor, and the book in general is about the the emotional skills that he has found valuable as a leader. And the book's called 12 and a half because his half, the one he's still working on, and then one I think I would argue that most people are working on, is kind candor, which is being straightforward while also being compassionate and really delivering truthful feedback and opinions that hopefully aren't damaging, but are necessary in a constructive and supportive way. So it's that idea of like fostering honest communication instead of, because the problem that he had was he would be nice, nice, nice. Well, he knew someone was messing up, and then it would be nice, nice, nice. Ugh, this isn't
You're
going to work. You're
fired.
fired.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that example really stood out probably more than anything else in the book because I used to be very candid as a boss and then swung to very, not very kind. But like I
Kind
all
of
of a
rah rah
sudden
without, yeah.
all of a sudden I developed all this like empathy and like connecting with them and not utilizing them just as like tools to accomplish my mission.
Mhm.
God did a lot of work there. And then I realized like, oh, now I'm withholding necessary feedback for them to be their best. And so like I feel like the last 3 years has like been realizing like, oh, I kind of swung this way. No, like just letting that pendulum go. So is candor, would you say that candor is brutal honesty?
Mm, not necessarily. Like
Is it necessary honesty? Like what's
yeah, that I mean, like, so that's a good like definitional question. Let's get like Webster's definition of candor: the quality of being open or honest in expression, frankness. So it's not necessarily brutal honesty, but it is like saying what you mean. Like it's not dancing around things. Um it's not painting a prettier picture. It's not, and like how you said you kind of struggled back and forth with candor. I think mine was more a, and still is, uh avoidance of confrontation
Mhm.
mixed with a super patience of like, people are going to learn the lessons they need to learn. I will help foster them on the journey, but I'm not going to be the one, it's like when you hear your two friends talking about an issue and you're kind of just like, yeah, you're full of shit and here's the solution, but I'm going to not jump in there and I'm just going to let you guys keep talking and
Right.
you'll figure it out, was is kind of generally my approach. But then in business, we get forced into certain things of, when we've had to let people go in the past, like I'm the one who says you're fired because
Oh, yeah.
a
If
lot of
you
times there's
work
a
for Blue Hills Chiropractic and Kirby gets called into a meeting, you there is one of two things that has happened. I am so beyond pissed that I know I cannot deliver the feedback in a kind or constructive way. And like, I will just be mean. You're not getting fired, but you're really in it, or you'll get fired. Yeah, it's never great when you and I, or just you. Usually, if it's you and I, you're getting fired. If it's just you,
yeah.
it's Lauren has tapped out. I
Well,
have pissed
we've
her off
tempered that
so
now
much.
because I do have more like monthly
Yeah,
or
that's true.
quarterly meetings with
That's
employees
true.
because we didn't want
When it's
that to be the
planned.
case
Okay, an
of,
unplanned Kirby
yeah.
meeting.
But I mean, part of that comes from like it, and it's uncomfortable for both of us. It's you having to like hold your tongue because a lot of times it's kind of an HR thing of like, we don't want this final experience to be something that they leave with a really bad taste in their mouth because, you unloaded emotionally, because it's a lot of emotions to get to that point. So it's kind of protecting the business from you talking. And it's all, but it's uncomfortable for me, but necessary that I have to step in. And instead of, I can give it a little bit of preface, but I also know that in consideration for other people's feelings, they don't want a 15-minute preamble that is obviously going towards your fire. So a lot of those meetings start with, and there hasn't been a lot. We've only fired like two or three people, but a lot of those, kind of starts with like, hey, this is what's going on. It's been a struggle, but this is going to be your last day and we can talk about it, but I just want you to know that.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay. So because I think we do need to let's say put a pin in firing people for an actual like kind of play by play because I think that's unfortunately because basically there's the feedback portion
mhm.
where like you're not even thinking like you want this employee to be their best and they're struggling and so there's that early onset kind candor and then there's the like, we've talked about this.
Well, I
Get
mean,
your shit together.
if we
And
want to
then
dial it back even farther, there's like the hiring
further.
kind candor further. Sorry. I think there's a hiring kind candor that we at different times have struggled with.
Mm.
Like, I think there have been times where we laid heavy on the work life balance, the
Oh, yeah.
supportive team stuff.
You're going
And
to be able to do whatever you want, whenever you want. We are
yep, like we
here.
have unlimited vacation time. We are honest in saying like, as long as it works out, that everything is covered and that we're seeing, and that the patients have enough support and the doctors have enough support. But I think that's bitten us when we've hired soft like that and
Mhm.
not communicated
Oh,
enough to like,
especially at the front desk. Oh, like, especially at the front desk. Like, I was initially thinking when you're talking about that from like an associate standpoint of just being like,
mhm,
it's going to be just rainbows for you here. But like at the front desk where it's like, this is the greatest, like, and we've realized that with some of our most recent hires that we weren't just like brutally honest of like, oh, it was a conversation I had with another chiropractor a few months ago at a TRP training, and we were just talking about how like turnover at the front desk is just kind of at an all-time high. And this is across the board with a lot of chiropractors. We can't compete with the salaries that are being offered to people out there. Like, holy shit. Like, I can't pay a front desk person $55,000 a year and insurance. Like, what? I can't do that.
Yeah.
And so then when we have someone on the line that you really want, they're wonderful. You're just like, your life will be perfect. And then they come and they're like, this is hard. You actually have expectations of me. And then you just went easy hard. And
Yeah.
so it's like, oh, yep. No, you got to be honest about the
And
job.
I think kind candor is kind of that definition of, do you want hard easy or easy hard? I think lack of candor is easy hard, and that's kind of like the examples in the book of like, I, got out of confrontations and had easy conversations and, maybe gave a slightly negative performance review or whatever. And then it ended up that I had to fire them, and firing someone is always emotionally gutting and makes you feel terrible. Like we don't hire people that we don't like, and getting rid of them
I heard
is
one, but okay.
one, but but it'll, and I mean, even then, even firing someone that is not a fit is still really hard on us, and obviously even harder on them.
Yeah.
So like the upfront in the hiring side, and I think we can still, and this is what I think we've started to do, and we're looking for an associate right now, so apply. But
Yes.
I think,
Apply.
but even in the conversations we've had with candidates so far, I think we've done a better job of like, for us, there is a component of the work that is, we want you to work Saturday morning. Now we can work with people's schedules and have them, only work 3.5 days a week or 2.5 days a week. But part of it is going to be those Saturdays. And that can be tricky depending on your lifestyle. But it's not true if we go like, and there's a lot of vacation time and we'll figure it out if you really need to do something on a Saturday. It's like, yeah, that is true for maybe a couple a year, but here's the expectation, and we need you there.
Mhm.
Like, and it's better to have that conversation and have someone go, I just can't do the Saturday thing, than to soft shoe, get someone in, and 3 months in, the only question they have is, when are you going to get me off Saturdays, or can I have next Saturday off?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
so I
So
think it starts with the hiring.
so I feel like with, if we imagine this kind candor and there's kind of like a ditch on both sides of the road, this is where like on one side, I talked about how, a lot of people are like, they're just so afraid of being mean. They're kind. They just are so
Mhm.
kind, but also avoiding conflict, taking that easy hard, or just you're so patient that like eventually they'll figure it out. Then the other side of that road is kind of this. I hate that we haven't figured out a different word besides masculine, because it's just so tethered to genitals and like,
I mean, yeah, it's just, think of it as energy, not
yeah, hyper
anatomy.
masculine energy that is like, you got to tell it like it is. You got to be straightforward. Like, like that, just like,
Almost like the football coach, like calling
yeah,
people a girl or a wuss, thinking like that's going to motivate. I always hated coaches who did that. I never responded to it.
they never did that to girls anyway. But, and so it is just going like, okay, taking kind of that self assessment of like, and you're going to teeter like in every situation where like, oh my God. Okay. So I will share this story because it's absolutely relevant. So I've been figuring out how to be in the middle of the road, not in either ditch, right? Now, my default nature, just how I am, like Kirby and I have discussed in marriage therapy, that like I tend to be in the direct side, like words don't hold as much meaning to me. So, like, a big part of candor is how you say something.
Mhm.
And like when Kirby and I will be reflecting on where we went wrong in a fight, he'll be like, well, you said this. And I'm like, I didn't mean that. And he'll be like, well, that's what you said. And I'm like, you knew what I meant. And he's like,
You
and
called
so
me a soft child.
I don't know if I've ever actually said that. Maybe I have. I don't know. Pick up your damn clothes off the bathroom floor. Okay, so um, so my default is just like, put it on the table, like just say it, and then you can like revert and shape. Like, well, okay, maybe that's not like, as I'm a verbal processor too.
Mhm.
So like it's just easier for me to like say it and then be like, well, let me backtrack a little bit because that's not really the right word. And like there's just this landmine of triggers that I've done as I'm trying to figure out. So my default is that. So then is just to be like kind of anger fueled, just say what feels good to say and be honest. So then I go into this. So this year has been um, just difficult. I feel like
Mhm.
running a business is difficult every year in its own way. And like God is definitely doing uh things, always working, becoming better. And so I had been withholding, kind of like tempering a dragon of frustration and disappointment and anger in our numbers. This kind of entire year has just been really mediocre, just mediocre as fuck. But I'm like, you know what? First of all, at its truth, I trust it's not going to stay here. Like we've had this kind of like, when you've been in practice for 13 years, it's like, okay. Yeah. Great. This year wasn't amazing. So I know that it'll bounce back. I also had trust that we were doing everything right. Like we were like, okay, we're doing the right things, that it will fall into place. I just have to kind of trust that right now this is what's happening for whatever reason. But inside I was just so mad and angry. And I'm like, all right, well, it's not the staff's fault. They're not doing anything wrong. And so they are not the ones whose name is on the paycheck. So they don't need to be losing sleep. That's a thing that I'll tell my employees all the time. Like, you are not paid well enough to lose sleep. Like, I love that you care, but like, no, that's my burden as the owner to lose sleep over things. And so pretty much I made it until, what was it? Like 4 weeks ago when I lost my
Yeah.
shit, 3 weeks ago. So I made it till the middle of October, just being like, hey guys, it's okay that we're not hitting some goals, like it's okay, it's gonna happen. And just fucking I jumped from one ditch into the other and lost my absolute shit.
I think that gets to an interesting point because like it was very angry and it was kind of vague. Like it was like, we need to get our shit together.
Yeah.
We need
Yep.
to work harder. Like, and I think that gets to kind of an essential thing. And on the other side, we were saying, when on the softer side, we were saying like, it's okay. We're doing the work. Things are going to work out.
And then I was
And
mad at them that they were like, cool, okay, you
yeah,
said it's okay. And I'm like, I
and
didn't mean it.
And neither of those were candor because neither of those were true. Like when
uh,
we,
I
I mean,
mean,
when
it
we
wasn't
weren't
kind.
doing the reason you were mad is because,
People weren't
well,
really doing their job.
yeah, like certain people and just in general, the vibe and the work ethic and the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. We have good systems. We've
Mhm.
worked really well to build good systems and they weren't being executed. They were being vaguely executed
R
in kind of a check the box way.
Yeah.
But when we dug in, when we took the time and like moved some people around and had someone who had the time to really dig into things, the ball was being dropped. Expectations were not being met. People weren't doing it the way that we actually expected and thought they were fully trained in. Like they were dropping the ball. So it was time for a come to Jesus moment. Just could have been with
Not
more
come to
Jesus
not
energy. I
it
mean,
could
you
have
had the
been a
Jesus
lit
energy, but it was like
it
tipping
was
the tables in the temple
I was
with the
gonna
money
say it was maybe a
changers.
little more come to the devil moment. And what sucks when I show like this is a lesson I've had to learn is like anytime that I lose my shit like that, whether it's on a kid. So, like, if you're a parent, you can
Mhm.
probably fully relate to this where you scream at them and you're like, I asked you to put your shoes on 7 times. Like, and it's that feeling where it's okay, like any parent can completely understand this feeling where you're like, sometimes that's almost like what they have to see to know that you're serious. And that's kind of where I had gotten. And like, I don't mean to throw my clinic director under the bus, but I had a private conversation prior to that meeting where I was in a safe space spinning anger with her, being like, I don't want to show this at the team. And she's the one who said, go ahead, like, do it. I don't know how else to motivate them. But the point is, I had to buy a damn cookie that says, oh, I'm sorry I was a bitch at our last meeting because I felt so bad because that wasn't how I wanted to be as a leader. And by the way, Walmart will not, they are not allowed to write expletives on cookies. So the woman looked at me like, this is like a $16 an hour employee at Walmart. And I'm like, hi, can you write something on this cookie? And she's like prepared for happy birthday. And I'm like, can you write, I'm sorry I was a bitch at our last meeting. And she just like looks up from her notepad at me, just like she's got a manager. I'm sure she's like, my manager's never bought me a cookie. And she's like, I can write B with some stars. And I was like, I'll take it.
So back to the idea of, so like when we talk about how, and we've had some of these conversations post that meeting of, can you talk about how better to handle it and what that looks like when, so like say it's an employee or two who are dropping the ball. Like how did the follow-up meetings and conversations that did involve more kind candor go?
Oh, why don't we allow you to explain how they should go? Because it still took a couple more meetings. There were meetings the next day that dug my hole a little worse. So why don't you, this is where we go to the Kirby teaches Lauryn how she should have handled a meeting situation.
Okay. So first and foremost, I think with candor, there's kind of a set and setting component to it of like, you can say the exact same words in the exact same tone, but if the wrong people are around, you're setting yourself up for disaster. So if say we had employee B, like employee X is the one that we're going to be talking to. We could say like, hey, X, maybe we didn't train you well enough, or maybe you have questions that you didn't feel like you could come to us with. But what we're seeing right now is a real lack of follow through and a real lack of accountability. And it's something that I want to bring to you because it is essential for this business and it's essential for you maintaining your position that this is solved. And I
I
want to
just want to slow clap you right now because you made that seem so simple. Like, for people driving, like sound editor Jacob, put like a mark there so people can go, because I guarantee you there are going to be people like me that are like, hold up. And they're just going to be inserting their own flaws that they need to talk to their CA or their associate about and just writing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so like with that is, so this is something that's important.
Would you have said like, hi? How would you have started that meeting?
Oh, I'd just be like, hey, X, like we need to talk about some stuff that deals with your job and expectations and how we can get better together.
Would you
Like
sandwich this? You didn't hear any sandwich in there.
well, I mean, there's the component of like you can sandwich it. I usually just soften of like, hey, we've said this to multiple employees coming in. Hey, this is a meeting to fix some stuff. We got to talk about some stuff. You're not getting fired. Okay. So
not really a sandwich. But it is, I do. Yes, we have had that.
And then there's the, depending on the person of like, obviously we love you. Our team is so nice. Like this may not be applicable to everyone of like, everyone really genuinely likes each other. Yeah. So it's like, everyone loves you. The patients love you. Like this isn't, like this is a let's get better meeting, not a let's break up meeting. Yeah. Now breakup meetings are different, but so that kind of softens it. But I like getting to the point of the meeting because if there's too much preamble, too much like how was last weekend, everyone feels it. Yeah. Everyone feels like you called me in here and you asked me to close the door. Like, so everyone feels it. But one of the things I want to backtrack to is, so even if you deliver it perfectly, even if you have kind candor, even if there's honesty, if you did that same meeting in a team meeting and said those things, like they are going to shut down. So there is a setting piece of if there is something that the team needs to work on, you can have kind candor with the team in a team meeting. If it does come down to employee X is dropping the ball, the team meeting is almost never the place, because you're going to add that embarrassment and defensiveness on their end, and a them versus the team thing, because often the way that we learn of issues is from the other team members. So it's okay for us in a private meeting to say like, hey, there's some things that we've, heard. No one's trying to throw you under the bus, but everyone is pulling in the same direction here. And we want to serve as many patients as possible, as efficiently as possible, and make sure that we're actually making money so we can keep everyone employed and make more impact. So like, we have information from your teammates, but I want you to know that it's in no way malicious. Now, even if you say that in a team meeting where they can look around and be like, was it Y? Was it T? Like, like, it's just not the setting. So the setting is important. The actual words of delivering, like tying it back to a purpose, reminding them. And if you have a good team and if you have a good business, you should be able to tie back to why we're here. Like, we're not here to, we want the employment experience and the team experience to be comfortable. But at the end of the day, this is about serving as many patients as possible and bringing as much health and impact to our community. So when things like this happen, we need to step in and fix some of these behaviors or strategies. And we're going to do it together. Like, that's another part that I like of the idea of Kind Candor is you as a business owner need to own it a little bit too. Like I said before, of like, we thought maybe the training wasn't good enough. Maybe you didn't feel you could come to us with questions, but in some way, shape, or form, this ball got dropped. So let's talk about how we can fix it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be prescriptive. Like, I know, here's how I would do it. I would build a tracking spreadsheet, but that's how I deal with things. So having that, once you've delivered the message, having the back and forth and being really there for it, and being able to, sometimes you might have to wade through some of the bullshit. It might be like, I think that only happened a couple times, and being honest enough to go like, if it only happened a couple times and it wasn't impacting the bottom line, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So I need you to know that we're taking this very seriously. And how can we help you take charge of this? Because this is something we're going to be following up on.
This is why you should be called into more meetings. I don't know why we only call you into the firings, because okay, so if somebody's brain was maybe a little autistic, if we were writing a prescription, an equation here. So we're not starting with how's the weekend. We're kind of getting
I think you can start with some like.
So it's kind of a sandwich, but like the sandwich is bigger than
if
people
there is
normally
sandwich
think
material to build with, then by all means, of like,
just like, if you can
hey,
say,
I want to tell
care
you,
about you.
Yeah,
we
care about you.
You're
doing a really good job in most
in
areas.
These things.
But we need to talk about something that is important to us. It's important to you. This has repercussions, and we want you to be doing your best so that we can all serve our best mission.
Okay.
Like, so
then you plop in, like, you're fucking up this, this, and this. And if you don't change, you're going to get fired. But better, you say it better, like the way you said it, not me, me. Then you add kind of your ownership, which I feel is important because, because you talked about I think if you don't have good training, like most chiropractors probably don't have adequate training. I think we have great training, and I still am like, ooh, we need to improve our training. Like, like we have fantastic training systems, and I'm just like always looking for ways of like, next time this is what we'll do.
And these are those moments that are, it's the Jocko Willink thing that we talk about of like when something goes wrong.
Who the hell is Jocko Willink?
He's a podcaster, former Navy SEAL. It's the guy who says good. Like something went wrong.
Oh,
good.
I have heard
like, now I know. Now I know where my systems are weak. Like, you're, losing. No one is responding to your ad on Facebook. Good. You found out what doesn't work on Facebook, or you found out that Facebook doesn't work for you. Like, you can it's the obstacle is the way. Like, when you have these problems, you've now isolated either a personality hiring issue of like, okay, we can't hire a person like that anymore. We found out who doesn't work for this role. Or we found a hole in our training that we can fix and make everyone stronger on.
You're such a wise, wise little Buddha. I'm so excited that I'm married to you. Okay, so anyways, back to my point. So ownership, okay, you own your systems, especially side note for those that are like really needing to take notes on this. If you resonate as somebody who maybe needs to work on your kindness, candor, there's a good chance you haven't really created an atmosphere where your employees feel safe to ask questions and things like that. So you're owning your shit. And then you're moving into like, okay, so if I were struggling with this, these are some of the things that I would do, but like, what's going to help you? How can we move forward together? What can I do? Then you
And
move on
with
to the
that,
problem solving.
having clear expectations, because that's part of this entire
Mm,
thing is if you just go like, you're not working hard enough and I feel like you need to work harder.
yeah.
What do you do with that? Like if you told me that in our life of like you're not working hard enough, and this happens in a lot of marriages, is
Never ours though. Never.
you just say like, I feel like I'm all alone. I feel like I'm the only one working. Well, if I then go and bust my butt on stuff for the clinic, but what you were referring to is you needed help around the house or you needed the yard picked up. I could go waste the next week of my life working an extra 20 hours, which I don't know how I'd find 20 more hours to work, but I could do that. And then you would still be disappointed and you'd still be mad and you'd still have the same feelings.
Right.
So like that candor and that clarity needs to come with it's almost like before you even have the conversations, you need to check in with yourself, kind of like what I was talking about with the prayer of like making sure it's the truth and not just your emotions. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you're just going like they're lazy, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, is it true? And if you can find specific things, then those are the subjects that you can discuss with someone and then have clear expectations of like, okay, we are, like when I say retention, here's what I mean. It's not doing just step one of the 5 steps you were trained on. It's chasing down old patients. It's if we are having a low week, it's being creative and finding ways to get back in touch with people who maybe haven't come in 6 months, but we know didn't really break up with us. It's going the extra stuff. So like if you need training on that, we'll set that up with the clinic manager or you and I can talk about it. Normally we send out regular texts. For these people, it might be a special text. Let's work on drafting that together. Like you being there to help them and showing them what the actual expectation is key. I think and you set up these systems and these all of these employees so that you don't have to do these jobs. But if you're never willing to do those jobs, if you're not willing to step in and go like, let me hold your hand through this, that's part of leadership is sometimes you have to get back in the trenches. It's
Mm-hmm.
not a set it and forget it. Now I'm done. Like leadership has feedback loops and sometimes you have to jump back in.
Okay. So it's going into that was really good. So going in very prepared. Like, so the time essence of these conversations is another thing that like I really struggle with because of my impulsivity. That it's like,
Mm.
I'm mad about this now. So I want to get it off my chest now. Um, and
I
that's
think I think there can be impulsive kind candor, but you need to have
ooh,
it
what would
in
that look
you.
like?
So like if you're just around the clinic and someone walks in and the front desk doesn't say hi to them and they just go back and get adjusted. I think you can go like, "Hey, say I was in the corner
Yeah.
and that happens and I'm just working on a computer. I notice it. They're talking to each other at the front desk and someone just walks back. It, if you're impulsive and mad, you can go like, what just happened there? Like no one walks in the front door without being addressed. That's not necessarily kind candor. It can be more like, hey, guys, I'm not here all the time. So I'm assuming this is an anomaly, but like the training that we did with the Ritz-Carlton book, we talked about making sure everyone feels welcomed, everyone is greeted by name if you remember it. I know I forget names sometimes too, but like I just saw that. Is that something that we need to re-talk about? Because that's one of the basic tenets that we talked about that we value here. And I'm sure they would go, I'm sorry, I didn't even see them. Then you can do the follow up of like, okay, is there any way that we can fix this? Do we need to, only have one person at the front desk? Was it just a one time anomaly that you guys were in a deep conversation? It needs to be more front of mind. I know we're supposed to be reading our cards of our core values before every shift. Is that still happening? Or do we need to talk about this at the next CA meeting? Because I
Mhm.
know things get distracting and we focus you on different subjects, but like this is one that isn't always.
Right.
So like
So
they shouldn't feel attacked by
what's the
that.
benefit of sometimes bringing it up in the moment versus always waiting until a meeting?
If you can correct a behavior in the moment, then it's more salient and going to be stickier in their mind of
Got it.
like,
Like training a dog.
yeah, if you can stop the behavior then and go like, hey, that was not cool. Can we fix that? And those are where kind candor comes in, because when you call out someone in the moment, there's going to be a bit of embarrassment. But if it's something especially, and that's kind of where knowing your core values, knowing what you've trained on, being able to go like, you notice how in there I said, we just trained on this. This is one of our core values. This is something you've agreed to. Like,
Mhm.
and added, do we need to do a retraining on that? Or do we need to address this with everyone? Or is this just a one off? And I trust our people. If they say,
Mhm.
oh my God, I say hi 400 times a day. I can't believe I missed that. We will make sure patient name gets a ton of love when they come back from their adjustment. I feel embarrassed that happened.
Mhm.
Okay, they get it. They've internalized it. They're going to do a better job. It was just a one-off thing. Or if they go like, yeah, we were just head down on this, and that does happen sometimes. Okay, that's something to talk about at the next CA meeting, because that's really, really important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, this is why when we got to like 11 employees, I was like, nah, this is too many employees. Nope, 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 nope. I don't have the vessel of kind candor to do this over and over and over
You
with
don't have
people.
to do it for everyone. You have to, so like it's a leadership skill. So
Mhm.
you have to make sure that our
Our clinic
associate
director
doctors
and our,
and the
yeah,
clinic director are trained in it so that they can do this for other people and bring it to them.
yeah. Yep, agreed. Okay, so then let's talk about firing someone because that's it's a really emotional time. So okay, so we have, to kind of summarize dealing with conflict with employees, you really plan for that, if you're going to
Mhm.
sit down with someone,
Yeah.
you are being very specific with the areas that need improvement. Um, you're taking your ownership and then you're working together. Like basically, what does improvement look like? You should be able to label, more detailed than just like, I need you to work harder. Oh, and making sure that you're not like projecting and making sure it's true. So like, are they lazy? Or do you have an emotional trigger that you're the hardest working person ever and no everybody is lazy compared to you? Like, okay, that might be one, type of thing.
I don't know anyone like that.
Never, never, never. So then how do we fire someone?
I think
Bitch, you fired.
firing someone starts a lot earlier.
Oh my
It
God.
is
Hold up,
hopefully
hold up,
that
hold up,
you've
hold up. Can we just have a side note? Do you remember what was Trump's show?
the apprentice,
Yeah, that
you
guy.
fired.
That guy was our president. There are people who have no idea, who are too young, that they didn't watch that show.
Oh yeah, that they didn't know like the
That
whole before thing.
I would
That's wild.
love to go back and watch that show because that man was insane out there.
There's some funny clips.
Yes.
There's some wild ones of like him just saying outlandish things and like asking one of the contestants if he's gay and then being like, "There's
Oh
nothing
my,
wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a lot of gay friends. They're beautiful people." It's just like, dude, why'd you say that then?
God. Yeah, that was what we used to watch when we were, I don't know, what would we have been then? Like 13, 14? because we didn't
Yeah,
have
I
any
guess
other
like in high
options.
school,
We didn't have any other options. That's
network
what.
television. That's it.
Mhm. All right,
I didn't even have
and then
cable.
that same generation went and elected them. Okay. All right. Anyways, we're firing people.
Okay. So like I was saying, I think if you're using Kind Candor throughout, this should come as no surprise because you probably had multiple conversations about
Mhm.
expectations. And for a lot of the times that we've let people go or people who have ended up quitting, it is usually mutual because there's already been conversations about how we work, how we operate, what are the expectations, how people interact with each other. And there have already been multiple conversations about what's going on and what needs to change.
Yes, we should
So then when
preface
it
that we've fired 2, I think just 2, but we've got
three,
I can't think of who the
oh,
3rd.
yeah, yeah, I guess you're saying of like us saying like,
We've
no, this
only
is not working. You
fired
have to leave.
2,
Yeah.
but we've gotten like 7 to quit. So that's a conversation for another day. You can buy me a drink first.
But ultimately, it comes down to the same thing of like, if you've been clear of your expectations,
Mhm.
if you've been talking about how things are going, then the firing is, like, hey, I'm sorry, this is a difficult conversation to have, but we're no longer going to be employing you. Like today is your last day. I want to thank you for the effort that you've tried, but we've had a lot of these conversations and it's just not working and it's not fair to us or you to keep this going. Um, we obviously hired you for a reason. You have skills, but for some reason or not, we didn't make the match or it's just not the right fit for you. And the sooner we get this stopped, you can get on to the next adventure and find the right people and the right setting. But for us, it's no longer here.
Mhm.
And then,
And like you said, it can be that air quotes simple because you should have been having some conversations with them up until that point. If you have been like quietly stewing that
yeah,
they suck and just venting to your spouse and other, then they might then you might feel like you have to elaborate more
eh,
because if you have to elaborate more, you haven't communicated likely effectively
yeah,
with them.
and they might go like, I thought I was doing better, and
Mhm.
you can even acknowledge and say like,
Oh,
there
breaks my heart.
was there was
This
some
hypothetical
improvement.
person is breaking my heart. They thought they were doing better.
Is that there, we did see the effort you were putting in. There was some improvement, but it's not happening to the degree and at the rate that we need, and I just don't see it working out.
But
Like it's better to have the truth. Like there's a Jordan Peterson thing where he talks about tell the truth in your relationships. It is better to have the fight now and know and work through an issue than it is to carry resentment for 30 years. Like in marriages, it's different because this is the person. Like you don't
Mhm.
want to be quietly stewing and hating them your entire life. In work, it's not a lifelong commitment, but it's that thing of it's better to have the conversation now than watch someone fuck up for 6 months while you go like, God, I want to fire him, but I need this employee right now.
Mhm.
Like you're better off having the hard conversation kindly. And if they can't do it, it's better to know now, get them out of there and get someone who can.
Right. Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's not an easy when you're talking about developing candor in leadership, it's it's obviously going to be most often used in very difficult situations. Like
Mhm.
it's easy to be candid, kindly candid with nice things. Like, it's where it becomes a strength or a superpower is when you have to really show restraint and put thought and effort into it. And some of us just have to put a little more thought and effort than others.
Yeah. And I think there's things you can look for in yourself to know when it's probably called for. So if you're feeling resentful towards like your employees, like if you have that stewing feeling in you, there's
Mhm.
probably a conversation that needs to be had. And it's not, why do you keep fucking up? It causes you to go do the work that we talked about. So you can go like, I'm just so mad. I'm just so mad at Sarah. Sarah's an actual employee who we're rarely mad at. So that's why I'm just like, I'm so sick of Sarah. She's the nicest person in the world. If you are all of a sudden just so mad at Sarah, it's not likely that it's just Sarah has turned into a jerk. And you need to go, okay, where are these feelings coming from? It's the pre-work I was talking about. Like, what is the actual behavior? Is my expectation of that behavior reasonable? Going back to kind of like, are your expectations reasonable, or is it just that you expect everyone to freak out when numbers are low and work as hard as you do? What can I steer her towards, or what can I train her on? Is there actually something to improve? Or are you just mad at a result, not a behavior? So if you know Sarah's busting her ass and she is calling all the people and she's doing a great job at the front desk, and for some reason the advertising isn't working to get more people in the door, then you're not mad at Sarah. You're mad at me for putting up shitty ads, or you're mad at
I'll go to
yourself
you.
for not recognizing
Yelling at the
changing.
wrong person.
Yeah. So like it's good to, when you have those resentful feelings, it's good to go through the work of, are they actually doing the best they can? Do we need different systems? Do we need different people? Is it just a market force? How can we pivot as an organization? Because then the power gets back into you. Just feeling bad and mad at people doesn't solve anything. It doesn't make you feel better. It doesn't make them feel better, and it doesn't solve the problem.
Okay, last question that I have is around the idea of like being careful of the landmines of emotional triggers when you're communicating. Um, is that air quotes simply uh, making sure to avoid shame, or is it more than that?
I mean, give me an example. What are you talking about? People's like personal
Well,
traumas?
when you read about like how to use kind candor in the workplace setting, one of the things that is like suggested is being mindful of emotional triggers. And I'm asking you, like, I don't know, what does that mean? Like, what do they mean by that? Like, don't, that's all I can imagine is like just avoiding shaming people.
Yeah, and so we've talked about, I'm sure at some point in the podcast, but we've talked about personally of like the shame. Shame is, I'm a bad person. Guilt is, I did a bad thing. And ideally, if someone's messing up, there's a chance they're going to feel some guilt. But in the stuff that we talked about of, this is the outcomes we expect, reminding them of the mission that you're all on, how their behavior is hurting or not living up to the expectations, and therefore hurting us from fulfilling the mission. But then also saying, here are my expectations, and here's how we can help get you there. That in itself avoids shame, because you're being specific enough where it is not you're a fuck up, it's you fucked up. And here's how we can get back to better. And and I'm going to be there with you. So there's not the shame. There's, going to be a little bit of embarrassment, but the antidote to embarrassment is often talking about it and knowing you're not alone.
Yeah.
So you're providing the comfort for those landmines. And that's why kind candor in itself, when executed properly, is diffusing the landmines, and being the space of, and there might be questions or there might be defensiveness that if it's hurled back at you of like, I'm just doing my best. That's a defensive reaction. And you don't go like, well, no, you're not.
Not good enough? Can I say that?
I think no. I think you would
No.
say, if this is, if what you're doing is truly your best, then I think we either had a miscommunication on our training or what the expectations were. And if you truly don't feel that you have time to do any better, then we need to work on the systems, procedures, and training so that you get faster at doing the things that you are doing well, so that you have time to get this up to standard, because this is something that can't can't just be, and we can't afford to hire another person. And if it truly, truly is like, go with God. Like I absolutely do not want to fire you, but if we can't work through this, this is a bigger issue. And I absolutely do not want to let you go. You're a valuable part of this team.
Yeah. So if it's this is as good as I get, then it's like, okay, well, then we need to train because like I can do my absolute best at basketball. And if it's not very good, then it's like, well,
Then you need to train.
then train. Okay, there was this moment where you had your hand like this, and it looked like somebody else's hand because of the green screen. It was really funny. That's why I chuckled and you were saying something very serious. Okay, well, I feel like we accomplished this. Do you have anything else to add?
No, I mean, I would recommend people go read the book 12 and a half. I'll have a link to it in the show notes. And yeah, in general, I think it's just, it always comes back to being generally kind, being empathetic, and having your overarching like mission and vision of your business in mind. Because if you have that pretty clear and you've communicated it, it is the roadmap to all these conversations. If everyone agrees on what they're there for and how they're going to execute things, then you have the scaffolding to climb for these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have those things, then you have nothing mutually agreed upon. And then why wouldn't a person do a certain thing in a certain way? You never told them how to do it or why they're doing it.
Right. Yeah. So if you are listening to this episode and some of the things that may have come up of like, I don't have the time to be holding hands, I don't have training systems in place, I don't have these leadership skills, then I will remind you that this is a shameless plug to get on the wait list for the Multi-Passionate Chiropreneur. If you are listening before December 7th, you can get on the wait list. If you are listening as of December 11th, I believe it is, December 11th or later, then we are probably launching. So you can actually go to the sales page to plan a discovery call with me. We'll get on the phone for free and talk about where you're kind of at in your career, what you're struggling with, and whether or not I think the program can help you.
Yeah. And in the program, you get a lot of this, but with specific conversations. So Lauren and I are both on many of the calls. I'm not always there because you guys talk about just pure Cairo stuff sometimes.
But you are on a lot.
As previously mentioned, no one wants to listen to me talk about chiropractic. No.
So there's that. And then, yeah, that's my plug. So we'll have that link below. And guess that's it. So until next week, She Slayers. Bye.
Bye.